All right, everybody, welcome back. We've got some more quarterbacks to take a look at in this video, and now we're moving on to the guys who I think are going to go in that day two area. Second round, third round. There's a possibility that this first guy goes in the first because there's some desperate need for quarterback, but on merit, I don't think it's there, and I don't think any team really wants to take this guy in the first. I'll put it to you that way. Could be wrong. Couple big boards have him up in the top 32, and I know some teams are going to like him, but for me personally, at this point, it seems to me the league has kind of moved on from Michael Penix Jr. as a first round pick, but the needs are going to drive some team to consider it. Okay, so Michael Penix Jr., Washington, 24 years old, 6'2", 216 pounds, measured out really well at the combine, 33 and 5/8 inch arms, very long arms, 10.5 inch hands. So those things are great. You won't find a longer arm and you won't find a bigger hand at the combine for quarterbacks this year. So the big boards, Tankathon, CBS, and the Draft Network have him in the first. PFF and Walter Football have him in the second, and ESPN has him in the fourth. I don't know why they're so down on him. That's clearly excessive and not going to happen. The database has him in the early second, which seems about right to me. But again, quarterback need is going to drive some team to consider taking him earlier than that. The stats have been great for the last 2 years. 65% completion across the last two seasons. Almost 10,000 passing yards total. Almost 70 touchdowns, 19 interceptions. I mean, the numbers are there. He is printing stats over there in Washington. Now, there's some stuff going on there with the system that can't necessarily be replicated in the NFL, but I will say this. I do like his chances of being able to replicate some of that in the NFL more than somebody like Bo Nix. Now, he has some other issues that Bo Nix doesn't have that make me wonder, but nevertheless, I think that Penix brings some processing ability to the NFL that I don't know if Bo Nix has. So Penix, very good pre-snap, great pre-snap decision making. He's got a very strong arm, can make all the throws. Sometimes they say of a quarterback, his arm tilts the field. Michael Penix Jr.'s arm tilts the field, can launch it into a tight window, can launch it 60 yards down the field, can flick his wrist and throw it 50 yards. It's a ball. It's a arm that just launches the ball like a cannon. And he's not afraid of fitting the ball into a tight window. Plays without fear, throws without fear. He's got good footwork in the pocket to slide away from pressure. He's able to keep the play alive just a little bit longer to make a play. He's got a good release. It's a quick release. It gets out of his hands quickly once he decides to throw it. It's not the Byron Leftwich release, which I was initially afraid of. And like I said earlier, he shows some ability to process a defense and make reads, more than we see from some of these other quarterbacks. I don't know if it's going to be enough, but I think he's got a little bit of a head start at the least. There is some stuff in that Washington offense that is very preordained. Washington throws a good amount of screens as well. Washington does a lot of one read stuff as well, but there is some processing here. The issues with Penix are very obvious. However, he's got a long list of serious injuries in his career. I think he had like 3 season enders at Indiana. And the medicals came back clean at the combine, which is great. I don't know how many teams are going to feel great about it, though. Some technique hiccups that will have to be fixed on his follow through. Sometimes his feet don't follow his eyes, and he misses on a throw because of it. Got to just tune that up a little bit. That's very fixable, though. The big problem, however, with Penix is when he's forced out of the pocket or making a throw on the run, it's not good. He is really, really bad when pressured. And when he's able to just slide in the pocket, it's fine. Like he did some of that against the Longhorns in the playoff game. But when he's forced to actually leave the pocket and make a throw on the run, it's tough. It's really tough. And in the NFL, I'm inclined to believe that eventually you're going to run into a team that can put pressure on you no matter how good your offensive line is and no matter how good you are pre-snap. What is he going to do then? Is he going to be able to deal with it? That is my concern here. Granted, CJ Stroud had the same concern last year. Last year, they said the same thing about CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud has proven to be perfectly fine, but that doesn't change the fact that there's a concern here. And also, it's worth noting his receivers in college were great, and he was definitely a guy who would just throw the ball up to Romo Dunze, throw the ball up to Polk, and say, go get it. And they would go get it because they were really, really good and better than the guys that were playing. So he's not necessarily going to have that in the NFL. Oh, and by the way, he's a lefty, which is kind of weird, right? You typically don't have lefties in the NFL. So the arm talent is there. It's undeniable. If you get Penix in the right offense with the right teammates, I think he'll be great. But on a lot of teams, it's not going to work. And honestly, I think that in the modern NFL, a pure pocket passer, you can succeed with him, but it's a high degree of difficulty. The days of being able to win with a pure drop back quarterback who can't throw on the move doesn't feel as likely to work now as it used to. So I take him in the second round because I like the arm and I like the processing ability. But first round, I just can't get there. I cannot see him as a first round pick because of all the problems. All right, second guy we're going to look at here, the other day two guy that I foresee would be Spencer Rattler. I think he will go in the third round. That's where a lot of the big boards have him. South Carolina Gamecock last year. Spent some time at other schools, obviously. He's been around for a minute. 23 years old, 6 foot flat, 211 pounds, little bit undersized, 31-inch arms, 9 and 7/8 inch hands. Ran a 4.9540, which is alarming. That's a little bit alarming for a guy like Spencer Rattler. You'd want to see a little bit better than that. That indicates that his escapability and mobility might be a product of his competition more than his actual ability. 1.63 10-yard split, 32-inch vert, 9-foot broad, 7.213 cone, 4.37 20-yard shuttle. It was not a very good combine for him. And it was enough to make me kind of go, hey, wait a minute here. This guy, like, he gets to the NFL, you hope he'll be able to do some of the stuff that, like, Dak Prescott was doing before he broke his leg. But with those testing numbers, that indicates that could be a problem. And I know everyone's going to bring up the Patrick Mahomes example, but that's clearly an aberration. And Spencer Rattler is going to have to prove on his own merit that he can do some of the escapability stuff in the NFL. So PFF and Walter Football have him in the third. CBS and the Draft Network have him in the second. ESPN has him in the fourth. So Mock Draft Database says third round, which I imagine he's going to go somewhere around here. Somebody's not going to be able to pass up his arm talent. The production over the last 2 years has been respectable, not necessarily good, but he doesn't have very good teammates. He has a really bad offensive line, and being able to throw for 3,000 yards in 2 straight seasons in that situation with a high completion percentage is noteworthy. So I think he's done a good job overcoming his circumstances the last couple years in South Carolina. So what I can say about Spencer Rattler positively, he's got a lot of starting experience. I can't remember exactly how many starts it is, but it's a lot. Another one of these quarterbacks who is bringing a lot of experience with him. He's fundamentally sound with his footwork when he's throwing the ball and his follow through. He's accurate because of it. Good footwork in the pocket. Makes a lot of plays where he just has to slide a little bit to beat the rush and then make a throw. He's somebody who does go through progressions and read defenses pretty well. He is somebody who brings that. He's not just a one read and take off guy. So there's all that, but the real appeal of Spencer Rattler is that he has the arm of a first round quarterback, and he's probably going to go much later than the first round. So if you get Spencer Rattler, you're getting a guy who, in a slightly different universe, would be a first round pick because the arm talent is there. He can make almost all the throws. Not all of them, but most of the NFL throws you need. So, generally speaking, consistency was his problem in college. He was struggled to be consistent with his fundamentals, consistent with his decision making, consistent with his ability to go through progressions and make the right decision, consistency with keeping his eyes up when he scrambles. He doesn't throw with anticipation the way you would like to. Sometimes he leads the receiver into coverage. Sometimes he leads the receiver into a defensive back. He is a little bit of a gunslinger. He's got 20 picks over the last 2 years. That's going to have to be tempered. It's understandable because he's not on a very good team in South Carolina. Excuse me. But it's going to have to be worked out of his game a little bit. He can't be trying to be Superman all the time when he's in the NFL. And that kind of stuff is going to cost you games. And of course, In this case, I think it's actually merited to bring up. He's got some off-field issues. There are questions about him as a leader, questions about what kind of guy he is, and that's why he's probably going to end up going much later in the draft than he would have otherwise. He is, again, probably a first-round pick who's going to end up going somewhere in the third round. So he's going to have to get past those things in order to get to where we want him to be if we draft him. So I love the idea of being able to get a guy in day 2 who deserves to go in the top in the first day. And if Rattler's there in the third round at one of our picks, I'm not against it. I think everything in his game that isn't great is fixable. The gunslinger stuff is fixable. Consistency is fixable. The ability to throw with anticipation, it's all fixable. That arm and that pocket presence, I think, will translate. But do you want to take the risk of him clowning around off field and not being able to maximize what he does on the field because of off the field stuff? So I would bite on the risk in the third round and not feel too badly about it. I don't feel great about it because I'm very aware of the potential issues here, but this is an opportunity to get something that you should not be able to get at this point in the draft. Rattler at one point was projected to be the number 1 overall pick in whatever draft he declared to. Now there's a possibility he doesn't even go in the top 100. If you have a chance to get that, then I think you jump on it because it's the most important position on the field. All right, so that'll do it for the top 100 quarterbacks now. Those are really the only 2 guys that I see going on day 2 right now. So tomorrow we're going to dive into the day 3 quarterbacks, of which there are quite a few. Only a few of them I think are truly interesting, but we will cycle through them, see who we like, see who we don't like, and see what makes sense. All right, I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think about Spencer Rattler and Michael Penix.